All right, so let's set the scene. The year is 2022. We're in Argentina, and we are cracking open the books on one of the biggest financial institutions in the country. Now, 2022 was supposed to be this year of normalization, right? We're all dusting ourselves off after the pandemic, getting back to normal. But while instead the world gets hit with the Russia-Ukraine war, energy prices just go vertical, and the global markets get thrown into a blender.
It was really the perfect storm. And if you think global volatility is tough for a normal company, just imagine trying to navigate it as a major bank, especially
Yeah.
in an economy that, it actually grew by about 5.5% that year.
Which sounds good.
It sounds great on paper, but at the same time, it was battling this incredibly high triple-digit trajectory inflation. It just creates this backdrop where the ground is constantly shifting.
It's like you're trying to build a foundation during an earthquake.
Exactly.
And that, I think, is what makes this report so fascinating. It's not just a spreadsheet. It's almost a survival guide.
Yeah.
We're not just watching a bank count its money. We're seeing a traditional giant trying to pivot while the rules of the game are changing in real time. So let's get into the weeds. I want to start with the bottom line because the numbers, they tell a conflicting story. I'm seeing a net result of roughly 43,000 million.
Which, just to give you a sense of scale, is a massive number on its own.
It is. It sounds huge. But then I looked at the year before, and it was over 52,000 million. So, despite all this activity and that economic growth you mentioned, their profit, it actually dropped by about 19%. That feels like a red flag. Did
Yeah.
they drop the ball?
Well, it feels like a red flag if you don't have the context, but it's a crucial insight if you do. In these high inflation economies, you have to look past the nominal increase in cash flow, the face value of the money. You have to look at the inflation-adjusted reality. That 19% drop isn't really because they forgot how to run a bank. It's largely due to monetary loss adjustments and just the rising operating costs that come with that kind of environment.
So it's the running up and down escalator effect.
That's a perfect way to put it. Precisely. You're moving forward, you're generating more cash than ever, but the purchasing power of that cash is just eroding. And the costs to keep the lights on, salaries, tech, maintenance, it's all climbing faster. So the bank didn't perform poorly. The environment itself just exacted a really heavy tax on their performance.
But this is where it gets really interesting for me. If you look at where they actually made the money, their net interest income, which is, the bread and butter of banks.
The spread.
The spread, exactly. That was up 39% to over 612,000 million. So the core engine is revving high. But then I saw this strange paradox. Deposits went up, but loans went down.
You've spotted the volume paradox. This is the key. This tells you everything you need to know about the economic mood in that moment. Deposits grew by 13%. People, companies, they were parking their money there, seeking safety. But loans to the private sector, they actually dropped by 12%.
That seems backwards for a bank, doesn't it? I mean, the model is simple. Get deposits, loan them out, make a profit. Why would loans drop double digits when you're flush with cash?
It signals a massive risk-off environment. Let's think about it from the borrower side first. When inflation is this high and the future is so uncertain, businesses just stop borrowing for long-term projects. You don't build a new factory if you have no idea if the interest rate will be 40% or 80% in 6 months. It's just too dangerous.
Okay, and from the bank side?
The bank gets very, very cautious about who it lends to. In a volatile market, the risk of default just skyrockets. So the company found itself flush with cash liquidity, but with this shrinking pool of safe places to lend it, they effectively became more of a vault than a lender.
So they're just sitting on a mountain of liquidity with nowhere safe to put it.
Effectively, yes. Their equity is at roughly 464,000 million. They are incredibly solvent, very capital heavy. But they chose safety over aggressive growth. They decided to be a fortress rather than a frontier explorer for that year. And honestly, given what happened in the middle of the year, that was absolutely the right call.
You're talking about the crisis in June and July. The report mentioned a bond market situation that sounded intense.
Intense is an understatement. I mean, that was probably the most white-knuckle moment of the year for their finance team. We're talking about a sudden run on government bonds.
Okay, for those of us who aren't bond traders, break that down. A run on bonds means everyone is selling at once.
Exactly. Investors just lost confidence and started dumping public debt. And when everyone sells, prices plummet, and the yields, the interest rate the government has to pay, they skyrocket. I mean, yields went from negative territory to plus 11% in a matter of weeks. That is a violent move in financial markets.
That is a massive swing.
It's a volatility explosion. And for a bank holding a portfolio of those assets, that's a huge stress test. If you're over-leveraged, that kind of move can wipe you out. But because they kept that high liquidity we talked about and managed their exposure very carefully, they weathered it.
It's like sailing a massive ship through a hurricane. You survive because of a strong hull, not by sailing fast.
Right. But surviving the storm brings you back to the business problem. If loans are down 12% and you can't force businesses to borrow, how do you grow? You can't just sit on the cash forever.
Which brings us to the strategic pivot. If you can't make money on the interest from new loans, you have to find it somewhere else. And the report talks a lot about a transactional focus.
That's the multi-million-dollar shift right there. If the loan book is shrinking, you need to own the payments. They shifted focus to efficiency and just maintaining market share, which is about 7.4% in loans, without taking on bad debt. But the real strategic move was from selling loans to managing the flow of money. If you can't be the lender, you have to be the toll booth.
I like that, the toll booth. And that segues perfectly into the existential threat section of the report. I feel like every traditional bank report I read these days is basically screaming, please don't let the fintechs eat our lunch.
It is the defining battle of this decade. Customers today demand what the report calls agile technological connectivity. They don't want to go to a branch. They want it all on their phone, instantly. And they have options now. Digital wallets, neobanks. The company realized being a bank just wasn't enough. They had to become an ecosystem.
I usually roll my eyes at buzzwords like ecosystem. It feels like something you put in a PowerPoint. But in this report, it seemed like they actually put some muscle behind it. They launched this huge internal rebranding, Pensar en Grande, thinking big.
And it wasn't just a marketing slogan for billboards. This was an internal mandate to change the company's DNA. They held a streaming event for employees with over 6,000 viewers. That's a huge portion of their workforce. The goal was to shift the mindset from, a bureaucratic, slow structure to an agile, digital-first culture.
But changing the culture of a bank is like trying to turn an aircraft carrier. It takes time. Did we see any actual products come out of this thinking big thing? Or was it all just motivational speeches?
No, we saw very tangible results, especially in payments. Look at their aggressive move into payment ecosystems. They became a key player in Modo, which is a digital wallet solution used by multiple banks to compete with the big fintechs.
Right, the numbers there were impressive.
They reached over 1.1 million users on that platform alone. They captured a 12% market share within that ecosystem. That is significant. It proves they aren't just a legacy player being left behind, they are actively competing in that space.
And they also integrated Apple Pay in March of that year.
Which is crucial. It's all part of that operational pivot. If the loan book shrinks, you own the payments. They processed over 4,400 million in transfers through their app. That volume is where they generate fees and, more importantly, where they keep the customers sticky.
Sticky is the key word there. If I'm using their app for my coffee, my utilities, my transfers, I'm less likely to switch banks even if I'm not getting a loan. I'm locked into their plumbing.
Exactly. You move from being a place you go to get money to a platform you use to move money. That's how you survive a credit crunch. You become indispensable.
So they're modernizing the tech stack. But let's talk about their physical footprint and their responsibility, the ESG section. I usually skim this part because it can be a lot of fluff. But there was something about a green seal for their headquarters.
Yes, the Cielo Verde. Their corporate headquarters tower got a certification 3 stars, 92 out of 100 points from the local city government for waste management and efficiency.
92 out of 100 is a solid score. But let me play devil's advocate. Does a recycling program really move the needle for investors?
In this context, yes, but not just for the save the planet reasons. Think about it through the lens of efficiency. The report notes that 21% of their energy now comes from renewable sources. In a country where energy costs are rising, energy efficiency isn't charity, it's cost control. It hits the bottom line.
So ESG as a defensive financial strategy.
Precisely. It's a leaner, greener operation. They also financed about $50.8 million in green bonds for renewable energy projects. Now, to be fair, for a bank this size, that is a starting point, not the finish line.
Right, it sounds good, but $50 million is a drop in the bucket compared to their, $600,000 million interest income.
It is. And we have to be realistic. The analyst in me has to point out the scale of the challenge here. A full net zero transition for a bank with hundreds of physical branches. It's a massive infrastructure project. They're moving in the right direction, but the road is very long.
Okay, let's look at the S-Social. This bank has a reputation for being strong in the interior of the country, not just the capital. How did that show up?
A heavy focus on financial inclusion, this goes back to the ecosystem idea. They're not just giving loans, they're running workshops for entrepreneurs and SMEs, trying to bring people into the formal financial system.
Which is just smart business. Those people eventually become depositors.
Exactly. It's planting seeds.
Hmm.
But I did notice a tension in the social pillar. They ranked 15th in the Great Place to Work list, which is good. But the report explicitly mentions the Great Resignation.
The hidden risk. Everyone was talking about that in 2022.
Right, and it hits banks harder than you might think. They're hiring heavily in digital, 35% of their new hires. But think about who they're competing against. Retaining a software engineer is very different from retaining a bank teller. They're competing with global tech firms with remote work opportunities in the US or Europe.
So the brain drain is a real threat to their strategy. You can't build a digital ecosystem if your developers keep quitting.
That's it. That talent drain is a major risk factor they are clearly worried about. You can have the best strategy in the world, but if you don't have the engineers to build it, it's just a PDF.
Okay, we have to touch on the G governance. This is always the tricky part. They're listed on the NYSE, so they have to follow strict U.S. laws, right?
Yes, the FCPA, the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, that adds a layer of scrutiny. It means higher compliance costs, but theoretically better transparency. However, we should also mention the legal proceedings section.
Yeah, I saw some administrative summaries mention something about foreign exchange. That always sounds a bit scary.
Right. The report discloses ongoing administrative summaries on foreign exchange regulations and anti-money laundering controls. Now, it's important to state the company denies liability and is actively defending itself.
Is this unusual?
In that market, no. These kinds of regulatory frictions are unfortunately sort of constant background noise in the banking sector, especially with complex currency controls. But as an investor, you always keep one eye on these disclosures. They represent potential risks. It's something to monitor.
The cost of doing business. Okay, so let's look forward. The report outlines their objectives for 2023, and they explicitly say it's an election year.
Which is code for expect volatility. Their first objective is very clear: navigate the uncertainty. The priority remains liquidity and solvency over aggressive expansion. It's a wait-and-see approach.
So don't bet the farm. Stay liquid, stay safe.
Exactly. But while they're waiting on the macro side, they're pushing hard on the micro. Their second objective is deepening that ecosystem relationship. They want to move beyond banking into smart cities and GovTech.
Wait, GovTech, what does that actually look like?
It means integrating their payment systems with government infrastructure. They want their app to be used for things like paying for parking, transit, municipal services. If you use their app to pay your property tax, you're interacting with the bank in a way that feels like a utility.
That's fascinating. It's like they want to become the operating system for the local economy.
And to do that, they need their third objective: cultural agility. They have to flatten the hierarchy. You can't build a smart city app if you need 10 signatures to approve a line of code. They're implementing Agile internally to move faster.
So bringing it all together, we have a bank that made less money in real terms but kept its powder dry with huge liquidity. They saw loans drop, but payments spike. And they're trying to turn this traditional bank into a tech platform.
If I had to distill this into 3 key takeaways for you, here's what they are. First, solvency over growth. In a volatile 2022, they chose to protect their capital rather than chase risky returns. Survival and stability over quarterly records.
Which makes sense, given that bond market scare. Better safe than sorry.
Second, the identity crisis is an opportunity. They are successfully transitioning from that place to get money to a platform to move money. The 1.1 million Modo users prove they can pivot. They can dance with the fintechs.
And the third?
ESG as efficiency. Their environmental moves, the green seal, renewable energy, aren't just PR. They're about cost saving and operational efficiency. In a high inflation world, cutting your energy bill is just as important as increasing revenue.
It's a leaner, greener, more digital fortress. But this brings up a thought I've been having through this whole conversation. We see this massive push for digital GovTech apps, wallets. The company has the capital and the tools, but in an economy where private lending is shrinking by double digits.
I think I know where you're going with this.
Well, we have to ask, can they maintain their massive physical infrastructure?
You mean the branches?
Exactly. The branches, the staff, the security, the whole physical footprint.
Yeah.
Will the digital ecosystem eventually cannibalize their own traditional branch network? If everyone is paying for parking on their phone and getting loans through an app, do you need that big stone building on the corner anymore?
That is the million-dollar question. Are they building the thing that will eventually replace their old self? It's the classic innovator's dilemma. If they don't do it, someone else will. But if they do it, they might render their biggest asset, their network, obsolete.
It's a tension every legacy bank faces, but for this company, in this economy, the answer will define their next decade.
It's a fascinating balancing act, building the future while managing the weight of the past.
Well, that gives us plenty to think about. It's not just a bank report, it's really a blueprint for adaptation under pressure. Thanks for helping us unpack all of that.
My pleasure. It's always in the details.
And thank you for listening. We hope you're walking away with a clearer picture of how a giant maneuvers through a storm. Keep thinking big, and we'll catch you on the next deep dive.